Welcome to Hermetic Journeys. I'm your host, Tony G. Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is part 3 of a now 4-part series on my trip to Egypt. Yeah, I just keep adding parts, right? But I promise this part 4 will be the last part. Because of the overwhelming response on my humble YouTube channel here to these Egypt videos, and because I love Egypt, the trip was just an amazing journey. Thank you, NEXT. I'm going to continue making videos on Egypt alongside the Atlantofugians videos. Why not, right? I mean, it's the best of both worlds. Egypt and alchemy. What's cooler than that? Oh, all right. Well, what's weirder than that? It's kind of actually cool because the next Atlantofugians emblem we're going to be looking at concerns a man sitting at a potter's wheel, which of course has some alchemical metaphor going on there. But what comes to mind in terms of Egypt is the Egyptian god Khnum sitting at his potter's wheel. So this video and the next video are going to be dedicated exclusively to the Temple of Luxor. So speaking of which, I'd like to dive right into it. We're going to talk about Schwaller Lubicz later, the man who developed the symbolist theory, and I'm going to employ several perspectives, give you a comprehensive interpretation of this particular image from the tomb of Khnum-hotep II. You might be asking yourself, and rightfully so, why is Tony G using an image from an ancient Egyptian nobleman's tomb rather than the Temple of Luxor as an introduction to Schwaller Lubicz's symbolist theory? Well, that's a darn good question. Well, that's because this image is simple and it's filled with profound meaning, as you will soon see. Additionally, I have to admit, John Anthony West used a similar image in his introduction to the symbolist theory in his book, The Serpent in the Sky, which I highly recommend. According to the symbolist way, developed by Schwaller Lubicz, the Egyptians chose the material embodiment of an insect, an animal, plant, or a bird that best expressed the principle they were to represent symbolically in whatever image they were displaying. And we'll get into more detail about that in a little bit. Here's the image I was telling you about earlier. It's a wall relief from the tomb of Khnum-hotep II, who was an official who lived in the New Kingdom period, which we talked about in the previous video. What we see here in this extraordinary painting is Khnum-hotep sitting and hiding behind a wall of reeds. And he's got a tremendous trap laid out, as you can see. There are lots of birds in the net, and there are some decoys in there too. It's kind of cool. And what he's about to do is pull on that cord, which closes the trap on all the birds. Concerning this image, or other images like it throughout Egypt, and there are several of them, the symbolist approach is actually beautiful. It's beautiful and it's profound. Let me read to you from the Temple of Man, Schwaller Lubicz's masterpiece, what he says about the net and the birds. The very great importance given to the net, which is revealed upon close study of it, prompts us to provide here in detail its principal elements. As always, the ancients have chosen from among practical tools whose functions are invariable, the image that best represented the intimate meaning of the thought they wanted to express. The hunting of birds with the net signifies the capture of the spirit. With the image of the net, allusion is made to a primordial action, that of making spirit concrete, giving form. So Schwaller Lubicz is talking about the capture of spirit into physical form. When he talks about primordial action, he's referring back to the initial creation of this universe, where what he calls unity, divinity, had to be ruptured to create duality, 1 into 2. So what does he mean by the rupture of unity into duality? Well, we're talking about complementary polarities here. Polarities, the very thing that's integral to the creation and the structure of this universe. Opposites that complement each other. Male, female, day, night. These things, you can't have one without the other. And that's pretty much, I believe, what Schwaller was talking about here. And we're going to go into this in greater depth in the 4th part of this video series. Now, how do I know this? Well, he tells us in this magnificent work, Sacred Science. He tells us that the capture of spirit into form occurs in 3 phases. Now, those of you who have been watching the Atlantofugian videos that I've been doing and studying alchemy will recognize these 3 phases immediately because they're identical. He tells us the initial creation of duality had to occur through the rupture or the destruction of unity. And through that destruction or rupture, putrefaction occurs. Now he calls this the black phase of this 3-phase process. Sound familiar? Next is the white phase, which gives form and body to the undefined entity through nourishment and life. The black phase of the impurities is cast away during this process. And finally, we have the red phase, which is the animation or concretization of the entity through its evolution into physical form. It's life. It's the animation of life that's occurring in this creation. So how does this relate to alchemy? And for those of you who haven't seen the previous videos on alchemy or Adelantofugians, why should you care? Who cares? Well, it's actually really important because R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz was an alchemist and uses a lot of alchemical philosophy and theories to help develop his symbolic or symbolist theories on Egypt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little glimpse into the alchemical process, a three-phase alchemical process to create the Philosopher's Stone, which you will see mirrors the three-phase process to bring spirit into form that Schwaller was talking about. So first is the black phase, where the alchemist takes either a plant, a mineral, or an animal and breaks it down through calcination or using acids and things like that to its basic components. Those basic components are then taken and brought into the white phase of the alchemical process where they are purified. Then, the purified components are taken into the red phase of the alchemical process where they are recombined to become the most potent version of the original substance. Interestingly, simultaneously, as the alchemist is going through this three-phase process to create the Philosopher's Stone or whatever it is they're creating, they're going through an internal process, turning lead into gold, if you will. It's a metaphor for raising consciousness, raising the level of spirituality, becoming more in touch with the divine. Now, if you want to learn more about the alchemical process, there's a link above me right now that will take you to a three-part series I did on the alchemical process, in case you're interested. So let's go deeper down the rabbit hole, if we dare. I want to take you on this Hermetic journey. This is really cool, and I think you're going to really like this theory. I think it's pretty cool. It's my own theory that I've come up with after doing a lot of research on the acacia tree and the birds and the net, the whole thing. We interrupt this regularly scheduled program to bring you a disclaimer. Yeah, I need to make a disclaimer. Oh, look, I just made one. There it is. Anyway, my theory has absolutely nothing to do with R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz's symbolist theory. But why am I torturing you with this? Well, at least I hope it's not torture, right? Because when we look at ancient peoples, we need to look at them through many lenses. And this particular lens looks at the possibility that they may have used hallucinogenic substances or psychotropic substances in their rituals to further enhance them and to perhaps raise their consciousness to the level of the divine. Okay? This is a theory I've been working on for a long time, many, many years. And I hope that it makes sense to you, and I hope we can apply it also to the Temple of Luxor. So let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. Now, some time ago when I was going to ASU, Arizona State University, I spent about a month down in Ecuador and met Dennis McKenna. He was a professor there who was teaching about chemistry and all that stuff. Well, I learned a lot from Dennis McKenna, a lot about psychotropic substances and their possible influence on historic imagery and iconography, and I'll be delicate, and I'll just say that, okay? And I think that applies here. Now, this isn't Dr. McKenna's theory at all, okay? In case I'm painfully wrong, as I have been many, many times in my life, right? I'm not going to tarnish his reputation because he's incredible, right? I want to take a look at this image very closely, okay? Take note that there are two acacia trees that bracket the net being cast by Khnumhotep II. However, I was wondering, could these two acacia trees also represent the two hemispheres of the brain and the birds within them, psychotropic substances that allow the mind to take flight? I discovered that two acacia trees can also, in some cases, behave as a gateway to higher consciousness, which is really very, very interesting considering my theory. Now, why would I even suggest this, right? Who am I to say this? Well, there's something about the acacia tree that really is very interesting. I did a lot of research on this. The acacia tree is highly hallucinogenic, okay? The leaves, the bark, the sap, everything on the tree is hallucinogenic. And, I mean, that wouldn't really be enough to substantiate my theory. However, I found out that the Egyptians also made a hallucinogenic wine from the acacia tree. Wow. Oh, yeah. And this wine was imbibed. That is to say, the Egyptians partook of this wine during ceremonies dedicated to Ayuzaset, the goddess of the acacia tree, which to the Egyptians was a symbol of the tree of life in the garden of Heliopolis. As you can see from this rather fascinating wall painting, the deceased, kneeling before the Tree of Life, presents his Ba, which is the bird-like figure with the human head, to the goddess of the Tree of Life. The Ba, which represents the personality of the deceased, partakes of the acacia tree. I discovered through some rather intense research that Isis, Hathor, and other female goddesses were associated with the acacia tree or the Tree of Life, depending on the ritual. Speaking of the ritual, drinking this hallucinogenic wine was a symbolic way of ascending the Tree of Life into the heavens to return to Source or Unity, or the gods. One more thing, I would like to draw a conceptual parallel to an Amazonian shaman who painted his ayahuasca visions. All right, ayahuasca is a particular hallucinogenic brew that is made from several plants. It's called the vine of the soul. All right, because the Amazonian shaman drink this particular fluid, and it takes them to another realm, another dimension, where they communicate with the plant teachers who instruct them how to heal people using plants and a lot of other things. Well, anyway, this particular Amazonian shaman, his name is Pablo Amaringo, and here is an image that I think kind of hints at this similar concept of the birds, a man transforming into a bird or a bird taking flight. At the bottom of the image you see him drinking ayahuasca, and he begins to have these visions. He transforms into a bird and he takes flight. His consciousness takes flight into the heavens. So I hope this little glimpse into how we do things here at Hermetic Journeys will inspire you to continue watching this video. Are you ready to go further down the rabbit hole? Then come with me. So where do we start? Because there's so much information. What we're going to start is where I normally do in concerning this type of thing. I want to begin with the traditional Egyptological perspective on this temple. We're going to start at 30,000 feet concerning the Temple of Luxor. Of course, it's located in the city of Luxor. This temple is really unique. Its primary function was during the annual Opet festivals. The rituals of the Opet festival celebrated the sacred marriage of Amun. We've talked about Amun in the previous video, with whom the king merged. So the king became Amun, symbolically, and his marriage to Mut. But really, this temple is dedicated to the continuation of the rejuvenation of kingship. So who built the Temple of Luxor? Well, several pharaohs built it. So Pharaoh Amenhotep III, and he was one of the great builders of ancient Egypt, was responsible for starting the construction of the temple during the New Kingdom. Okay, so New Kingdom Pharaoh, 1390 to 1352 BC, followed by Tutankhamun, 1336 to 1327 BC, then Horemheb, 1323 to 1295 BC, and then finished by Ramses II, 1279 to 1213 BC. If you recall from part 2 of our 3-part series, these are the New Kingdom pharaohs. We talked about the New Kingdom, the Old Kingdom, and Middle Kingdom, and the intermediate periods where all kinds of chaos and stuff ensued. Speaking of its construction, it took 111 years to build this temple, right? 4 different pharaohs, 111 years. And this is why Egyptologists have a problem buying into R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz's theory, okay? They're not buying it because I guess they can't imagine 4 pharaohs agreeing on something with those big egos. In any case, and he has a rationale for this. He succinctly tells us in his book, The Temple of Man, one tends to seek in ancient Egypt what might be called a rational expression of esotericism. This is an error that arises from prejudice that there is no esotericism, or that there exists an intent to conceal a certain knowledge. Rationalism is based on the data provided by the senses, and the senses perceive only a meager part of what it is. Thus, through rationalism alone, we can know only what is encountered through the senses, what is ponderable or quantitative. It's time now to take a look inside the Temple of Luxor. These are photos I took as I walked through the temple for the first time. I hope to capture the awe and beauty of this magnificent edifice. So let the music and the photos take us to that ancient, sacred place of wonder and enlightenment, the Temple of Luxor. Please enjoy. I hope I've been able to share with you the splendor and the wonder of this incredible temple. In the next video, we will look at the temple exclusively in great detail. Let's talk about the brilliant man with the impossible name who is responsible for this rather unorthodox perspective. It's time to talk about our dear friend, R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz. He was born December 30th, 1887, and died December 7th, 1961. His birth name was René Adolphe Schwaller. That's his name. We're going to call him René for the sake of brevity, okay? But he was given this title, de Lubicz, by Lithuanian writer, author, and mystic Oskar Władysław de Lubicz Miłosz. I am positive I screwed that up. I'm trying. I'm doing my best here. He also wrote under the name Aor, A-O-R, not sure that's how you pronounce it, which means light of the higher mind. Now, he left home at the age of 18 after completing an apprenticeship with his father, who was a pharmaceutical chemist, all right? So he already had a background in chemistry, and he moved from Paris to Alsace to study chemistry and physics. So anyway, he also developed an interest in painting. Get this is incredible. He was a student of the French painter Matisse. Yeah, Henri Matisse. He was a student of Matisse. That is incredible. This guy was firing on all cylinders on both sides of the brain. And we're going to talk about the brain and the left and right hemispheres and all that stuff in some of his work. But man, he was incredible. I mean, what an incredible guy, right? Later on, he moved to Egypt, and this is where it kind of all began. And he lived there for 12 years, studying this particular temple of Luxor. It's kind of incredible. He worked with French Egyptologist Alexandre Varille and with Clement Robuchon, an architect who was chief of excavations for the French Egyptological delegation in Cairo. Wow, so he had some, accepted scholarship working with him in his studies. Interesting, huh? It was in his exploration of the Temple of Luxor that René developed the symbolist theory. René had two primary arguments against traditional Egyptological perspectives concerning the Temple of Luxor. Number one, he felt that the temple its primary purpose was a temple of mystical initiation. And number two, he believed that the temple was riddled with symbology, okay? And it incorporated a tapestry that involved science, religion, art, and architecture, all in one beautiful structure. He believed the temple was a living thing. Now, René's writings, like The Temple of Man, The Temple in Man, Sacred Science, a variety of different books, had a tremendous influence on John Anthony West. And of course, anybody who's watching this should probably know who John Anthony West is. And if you don't, just look him up. You'll be amazed. All right. Now, René casually mentioned that he believed that the Sphinx enclosure was weathered by torrential rain. And John Anthony West grabbed hold of that, and he really ran with that football, okay? He employed, of course, Robert Schoch, the very famous geologist, and of course they turned the Egyptological world on its head. What is interesting is that apparently Alexandre Varille and Robuchon agreed with Schwaller de Lubitz's unique theories concerning the Temple of Man, right? Although at the time, the Egyptological community was told to build a wall of silence around René's theories. So we've gotten a glimpse into the symbolist or symbolique theory of R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz. We've looked a little bit at his background, and the next video we're going to thoroughly explore the Temple of Man to the best of my abilities. It's so incredible, and it's so beautifully complex. I'll do my best to keep it simple and to make it interesting and enjoyable to everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Just click that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. Truly appreciate it. In any case, have a wonderful, wonderful time until the next video. Be safe, and I'll see you soon.